Today's case has everything from grave robbing to necrophilia to visions as a young boy. But before we get started, welcome to True Crime with Maneater. If you're interested in all things true crime, including missing person cases, cold cases, and just the strange happenings of the world, you've come to the right place. Be sure to subscribe and turn on alerts so you never miss a video upload. Let's get started. Karl Tranzler was born February 8, 1877, in Germany. As a young boy, Tranzler would go on to report that he had visions, and often these visions were of a young woman who was beautiful and dark-haired and destined to be the love of his life. He was reported to have studied weather patterns in Austria until 1910, where he stayed until after the First World War ended. A short time after, he returned home, got married, and had 2 children. And in 1920, the family moved to Florida. But things didn't work out so well with his wife and his children, so he abandoned them and accepted a job as a radiology technician in Key West. One day, this couple comes in to his hospital where he's working, and they're telling him about their daughter, Maria, who was having a lot of health issues. When Maria appeared, Tranzler was stunned. There she was, the woman from his visions as a child. She was beautiful, she had dark hair, and he just knew that this was her. This was his true love. Maria was the daughter of a cigar maker, and her mother was a homemaker. Tranzler was just stunned when Maria walked into the room. This 22-year-old beauty he had searched for his entire life was now standing in front of him, ill and in need of help. He told Maria's family he would do everything he possibly could to help her, and he meant it. After all, this was the love of his life. Maria was unfortunately diagnosed with tuberculosis, and I just want to note that obviously today that's a curable disease, but back then they didn't have treatment. But this didn't stop Tranzler. He didn't really have the qualifications to be experimenting, but he did anyways. He used a bunch of tonics and elixirs and medications to try to save her. She was basically kind of a test subject. He would also shower her with gifts and love at her family home. In spite of his best efforts, Maria would pass away in October of 1931. This would leave her family heartbroken, but it also devastated Tranzler. He insisted that the family let him pay for a stone mausoleum, and with the family's permission, he hired a mortician to get the body ready to be laid to rest. But the family didn't realize the only key to the mausoleum would be in Tranzler's possession. And every night for 2 years, Tranzler would visit Maria's mausoleum. And although the family thought it was weird, they just thought maybe he was really that heartbroken. But it just gets stranger. In April of 1933, Tranzler did something absolutely unbelievable. He went to the mausoleum, put his key in, turned the knob, took Maria, placed her in a wagon, and took her home with him. Obviously, this would make his grieving easier because he would no longer have to return to the mausoleum every single night. Maria would live with him forever. And obviously, it's been 2 years since Maria died, so Tranzler had a bit of a task on his hands. He needed to preserve and maintain her condition. It's reported that he took an old airplane and made it into a makeshift medical lab. That's where he did a number of DIY projects, including taking Maria's body and working to keep it intact. He would go on to use a variety of materials, from glass eyes to coat hangers to plaster. Tranzler also used other types of wires to stabilize and maintain her skeletal frame. He stuffed her torso full of rags in an attempt to make it feel and look like her original form. He even went as far as taking real hair and putting it into her scalp. Of course, we're all wondering, what about the smell? Tranzler had an answer for that too. He would use perfume and flowers and disinfectants, tons of other preserving agents to keep the rotting body at bay. He also purchased and used a wax that morticians use to make her face look more lively. The townspeople would report that they saw him buying things like women's clothing and jewelry and handbags, but they weren't sure why. Tranzler bought those things so that he could dress Maria and obviously change her clothes, and then he put her in his bed, and that's where she would remain for the next 7 years. A local boy said he once saw Dr. Tranzler dancing with a large doll, and after that, Maria's family began to think something was off. One night in 1994, Maria's sister had had enough of Tranzler's nonsense. She wanted the key back to the mausoleum. After all, it had been 9 years. So she drove to his house, went up the long driveway. When she got there, she noticed he was dancing with a woman. She sat in her car for a few minutes, kind of debating if she should go in and interrupt the moment, but she had driven all the way out there, and honestly, she just wanted to get it over with. So she went to his door, raised her hand, and knocked. But nobody answered, so she kept knocking because she knew he was there. He would even go as far to turn all the lights off and be completely silent. But she didn't give up. She kept knocking until she heard him coming to the door. He opened it just a crack, just enough so that they could see each other. Obviously, Maria's sister demanded the key back, and as the two are talking, he made a grave mistake. He kind of just turned slightly, and that was more than enough for Maria's sister to see what he had been doing. I'm sure for a moment she couldn't even believe it herself. After Tranzler shut the door, she got in her car, she drove home, and she told her family what she had seen. Can't even imagine the shock she was going through. She literally just witnessed her dead sister, who died like 9 years ago, sitting in a dining room chair, and she put 2 and 2 together. So the family called the authorities, who took the matter serious. They obviously went to Tranzler's house and they were like, hey, what's happening here? Upon viewing what many thought was a doll, they realized the truth. It was Maria. Tranzler had robbed her grave. An autopsy of the body revealed quite a few interesting things. Not only had he stuffed her full of rags and used wire to make sure her frame remained intact, but he took a paper towel tube and placed it in her genital area. Although he would never admit to necrophilia, there is some lingering suspicion that he was in fact having relations with the dead body. After an evaluation by a psychiatrist, she noted that he was not fit to stand trial. And what's even worse is the statute of limitations had passed on the crime, meaning he was free to go. Maria's body was eventually displayed at a local funeral home where 7,000 some odd people have seen it. And as for Tranzler, a lot of people felt quite sympathetic to him. After all, he thought this was the love of his life. They viewed him as a hopeless romantic who would do anything to be with his love. And although he's eccentric, I guess in a sense, they thought it was pretty romantic. I, on the other hand, do not. He went on to live the rest of his days alone and eventually died in his house in 1952. He was eventually discovered 3 weeks after his passing. And there you have it, one of the most bizarre stories I've ever encountered. That's it for today, guys. Thanks so much for joining me. If you like this video or any other videos on my channel, be sure to subscribe and turn on alerts so you never miss a video upload. See you later.